What is good, everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today, I've got KevinCoolX, Halo YouTube legend, with me today to talk about Mass Effect. I want to just jump straight into this, Kev. You have told me that this series, if it wasn't for Halo, your entire channel would be Mass Effect out to the nines. Is that correct?
I would say that probably yes. Yeah, because if it wasn't for Halo, I would just be a full-blown Mass Effect fanboy. Like, it's this game and Trilogy just like hit so different than any other game I've ever played, any game I've played ever since. I know I love my Mass Effect. I like it a lot.
Well, I'm very excited. I just finished up a replay of Mass Effect 2. You immediately came to mind, and I wanted to just nerd out today and have a discussion. So, when did you first play Mass Effect? Where were you at in life? Were you playing it on the PC? Were you playing it on 360? What was that initial experience like with Mass Effect, and why do you think it clicked so well?
I think that that my introduction to the franchise is what kind of actually helped me have a greater attachment with it. It's because it came out 2007, if I remember correctly. I remember when I moved into an apartment complex, I was in college at the time, and the internet there was like a shared Wi-Fi thing between like multiple apartments. So like it was awful.
Yeah.
Like this is back in like 2007 YouTube, like 480p. It would take me like 30 minutes to like preload a like 10-minute YouTube video. It was awful. So like playing online, like Xbox Live was like, you can't even do this. And I'm like, okay, well, I still want to play video games, and I can't play Halo 3 online right now. So I need like a good like game account, like has a lot of time. I can sink my teeth in and play, go on IGN, because back then it was the early 2000s is what you would do. And I saw a lot of really high reviews for Mass Effect. I was like, okay, that seems pretty interesting. And so I, went to my local game shop in the area there and jumped in and started playing, and just like instantly clicked for me. The sci-fi elements of this game were just incredible. The storytelling's incredible. Even I also say the gameplay, for one, is still very good, even though most people like to put it down. I enjoyed it personally. But yeah, like it was basically kind of came out of necessity of me still wanting to play video games, but couldn't play online. So I needed to play something offline that was, had a good amount of depth to it. And Mass Effect was absolutely that game for me.
Yeah. I remember seeing the ads. They had sort of pitched that your decisions would carry forward, right? They knew from the beginning they were going to do something grander than just the first game. And the marketing was good enough that like I was sucked in. I, at the time, wasn't even playing a ton of games. I was racing mountain bikes, and like outside of Halo, Halo 3 and 07, I wasn't playing very much, but I still have on a bookshelf here the like Brady Games Guide to Mass Effect 1, and it just
yes.
Yeah, it's still here. It's still amazing. Mako will always be the best ride in any video game ever. And I jumped ship between Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect 2. I moved to PS3 for Mass Effect 2, but anyway, we'll get to that point. I think just your story of the connection to wanting a single player game out of necessity, just because the internet wasn't that great. Also, I relate with that heavily because online gaming for me, I was pretty close to the college years, but I wasn't quite there. And so at home, I had terrible internet. Unless I was at a friend's house, I wasn't playing online games. And there was something different about the vibes and the atmosphere of Mass Effect 1 than anything at the time. It kind of nailed the perfect sci-fi feeling. It was a blend of so many things, but also original at the same time. You kind of know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You definitely tell there were callbacks to just like traditional sci-fi stuff. Like, I think I remember hearing people make the reference to Mass Effect being almost like Star Trek in a way, not Star Wars, because Star Wars is more like action, big explosion kind of stuff, where Star Trek is more like discussions about like humanity and its place in the world, and like really crucial decisions affecting communities and people and stuff like that. That's kind of like, and based on conversations, that's kind of what really connected me to the Mass Effect franchise so much.
Yeah. Yeah. What really like stands out when you think back to it? Is it the story, that universe? Is it the crew? Like, what really made Mass Effect 1 that magnetic experience that then pulled you through the rest, that made you so excited to go through the trilogy?
I think it was. Let me think here, because it plays a little bit into what I've played previously from BioWare, most notably Knights of the Old Republic, and I loved that game. And seeing how they basically took that game format and then brought it into a different area, a new generation of gaming. A lot of the lines were actually voiced, which made it easier for me to follow along because I didn't have to read so much.
Yeah.
But also having things where like your decisions made a difference, and I never really played a game that had where your decisions made that much of an impact on how the rest of the game played out. I just thought that was just for me, it was a unique experience.
It was, and I'm trying to. I can't imagine we make this a spoiler-free discussion. Can we just talk about some of the crew decisions and some of the choices?
No, we could talk
in
about
Mass Effect 1. It's been long enough.
Yeah.
Before I get to those, I'm going to look up a list to try and remember like what the main ones were. I just went through it again with that cool comic that you can do right before Mass Effect 2 if you want to just like jumpstart ahead.
Oh yeah, that's right, yeah.
Do you think there's like a whole generation of players who have no idea what Mass Effect is, why it was a big deal? Because I've got this sense from talking about it online, I think we've kind of rolled over into a new generation of players where there's a pretty big audience that kind of knows of it, but not really the impact it had.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Just because really like the era of peak Mass Effect from like the launch of 1 to Mass Effect 3 was like what, maybe 5-6 years or something like that between all three of those games.
And 2007 was ME1, right? Oh, all three. Okay, yes. I get you. Yeah. You're correct, I think.
Yeah, so it's like Mass Effect 1 launched in 2007. I think Mass Effect 3 was 2012, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So it's just like realistically a pretty short span between those three games. And it still left such an impact that people are still comparing RPGs to this day to Mass Effect. Anytime BioWare releases anything, they just go, well, is it as good as Mass Effect? Kind of thing. Like, yeah. But the thing is like, yeah, like that's such a different era of gaming back then as well, where so much time has passed that, yeah, you can have a new generation of players now at this point who would like know of it. They probably know that people say it's really good, but never really tried it or anything. Maybe just because it's older and they have so many new games out that are amazing. And maybe even then, probably larger experiences than what Mass Effect can offer. Compared, but for what is nowadays, I guess a good way to phrase it. And I know they tried to do that update a little bit when it came to Mass Effect Andromeda, but that game just didn't quite hit with like the expectations you would have with a Mass Effect name on it. But we have a new one rolling out here. Eventually, we'll see. I'm still probably thinking like a 2026, 2027 release when it comes to this new Mass Effect that they're working on. But it looks to be. I mean, there's so many different ways they can go about doing it, but yeah, it's the whole new generation of people who have now had a chance to experience how awesome the Mass Effect franchise is.
I hope they nail the new entry. I really do, because I think if it gets like one more kind of mid-release, that a lot of people, like you said, that new generation will just write off this franchise. And I see this as so rich. I mean, they're working on a show currently. I think Amazon has a show in production. And after seeing the Fallout show, I'm like really encouraged about this. Okay, the first major question. Who did you save, Ashley or Caden?
First time playing through, I saved Ashley.
Yes.
I was a fan of Ashley. I know.
As did I. Yep.
People not a fan of her, a little racist against aliens, totally get that. But if you actually spent time talking with her and getting to know who she is, you were like, okay, it's just like more of a tough shell kind of thing. You get to know her more as a person. You sympathize with her a lot more. But I think that initial conversations really turned off a lot of people with her.
Yep. It was Ashley in like every playthrough I did. But I only went through Mass Effect 1, a full playthrough once. I did like start a second one and it didn't happen. So why don't we jump to the game that I have replayed a bunch of times and my favorite in the series, Mass Effect 2. What did you think about this? Obviously, there's a huge jump in gameplay and a major shift. It's like we went from, like you said, thoughtful Star Trek, more RPG elements, to Michael Bay action movie. And that progression just increases as you get further into the franchise, So what did you think about the jump and the change?
I definitely liked how much more snappy the gunplay felt in Mass Effect 2. It just really felt like they actually toned it tuned it perfectly, I should say, to really be like, key aspect of the game being shooting as in the gameplay. And a lot of people, even back when Mass Effect 1, back when, it was getting its reviews, people were kind of not really too big fans or really keen on the gunplay of it or the gameplay of it specifically. So that's one thing I think they really did improve on a lot. Like you really felt like the weapons shooting and stuff like that. I actually was not a fan of having to have ammunition initially in Mass Effect 2. Because remember in Mass Effect 1, you had unlimited ammo. It was just your weapon would overheat. And being like a cover-based shooter, it'd be kind of tough to like push forward when you have to run out in the open and when there's no cover to get more ammo or something like that. Like I had to do quite often with Mass Effect 2. But now looking back at it, I actually agree with that change, just mainly just because it helps make players move around a little bit more. So you actually have to like utilize the map rather than just kind of staying behind one piece of cover and just picking people off slowly over time kind of thing. Kind of a little bit of a war of attrition kind of thing. But I also really liked the improvements of like, I think they had like quick handle abilities when it came to, you can like map quick abilities to your controller, if I remember correctly.
Yep, on the D-pad. Yep, each of your squad mates you can assign one button to. You could order your squad mates around, which was really nice. And yeah, just the whole usability was like dramatically improved. And I think the gameplay is the reason I replayed Mass Effect 2 so many times, just because the classes had such a dramatic, I guess you could say similar with Mass Effect 1, but gunplay took a huge step forward with the second, And
I think it was in Mass Effect 2, they added in the bionic explosion, if I remember correctly.
Is it overload or?
No, it was ability where if you like hit someone with warp, and then which would kind of prime them up for any kind of damage, and then you hit them with a throw, it just causes bionic explosion, which would just do extra damage and extra physics happening around. And that was just one of the most fun things to do, where I would just be like warp throw, and just having just these crazy bionic explosions happening. It was so much fun to just prime that up, tee it off, and hit a home run like every time. It was great.
Oh my gosh! So the suicide mission in Mass Effect 2, jumping to the very end of the game. How did it go on your first playthrough? Did everybody survive? Did you make the right choices? Like mine.
Oh,
I tried so hard that first playthrough. I did everybody's loyalty mission, I think. And then I made a really stupid mistake right at the beginning, and Legion ended up like dying in the tubes or something. And I was so mad and sad. I didn't even know it happened at the time. And I just remember like going back, replaying it and trying to save it. I thought that was a cool twist. I don't know if I've ever kind of played a game like that where you can literally just lose a squad member who will not be there at all in the next game.
Oh yeah, dude. The first time I went through the suicide mission, it was a complete mess.
Oh no.
This is also like, I don't think I really looked at much in the way of like tutorials or guides or anything like that. I just kind of played. And so I tried my best, but I remember I was very upset in the characters who died at my first playthrough because my love interest in the game, Tally, my heart and soul over here, my one true
excellent
bae.
Choice. Yes.
My one true video game bae. But you're like, oh, we need a tech expert. Who do we send in there? I'm like, Tally, she's my number one girl. She'll do it just fine.
That's right.
She died. She died in the vents.
No.
And I remember like pausing the game, and I was just like, can I go back to a previous save? Like, no, it was too far gone. You couldn't go back to a previous save. And I was just like, just heartbroken. This like, it was just the worst feeling possible. And I think I also chose like, because you have to choose another character to like lead a group. And I think I chose Grunt for that one. And he died in that situation as well. And then also, isn't it in Mass Effect 2? And also, I remember in Mass Effect 2 as well, Morden died as well. Like all the best characters I just killed off by accident. It was just like, it was a complete mess. But I mean, it's like we won, but at what cost? And it hit me hard for sure.
Yeah, I think it's such a cool concept where you really can finish Mass Effect 2 pretty quickly and miss out on the bulk of the game if you skip all of the loyalty missions and just roll the dice. It becomes basically a speed run where you cut out 60% of it. But thinking back, what a cool concept. On replay, it just gives a lot of opportunity to think about things differently. Yeah, I put Tally in the vents on this current playthrough, and everybody survived, but I totally, like a save scum style thing. I looked up, make sure you have these upgrades and do these things. Like I went in super prepared on this replay because I knew I was taking the save into Mass Effect 3. And Mordin typically dies. Like if you don't send Mordin back, I think with the Normandy survivors, Mordin is very much at risk. I would be curious to watch a video like how the chances are calculated and all the stuff that goes into it. Because even if you do everything pretty close to correct, you can make plenty of mistakes. Like if you side with the wrong person when they get in a confrontation, just very creative and cool stuff where the company wasn't afraid to let you miss out on content in the next game.
Oh yeah.
So
like I remember like when Mass Effect 3, when they had to replace all the characters that died in the suicide mission. And I remember just going like, this should be Mordin.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize on this replay, I do not like Mordin. Like I know he kind of comes through pretty clutch in Mass Effect 3, but if you just judge him on Mass Effect 2, I was like, oh, you're not my favorite dude.
No, you don't like Mordin, dude?
Not
I would say majority of people in the community are like heartthrobs for Mordin. Like people love Mordin.
He comes around in Mass Effect 3, but Mass Effect 2, man, there's some awfully dicey stuff going on with that genophage research.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was just following orders, but then felt bad,
Yeah.
Did you at least get him to sing the song for you?
No. What is this?
Oh yeah, I think it's in 2. If not, it's in 3. But I'm pretty sure it's in Mass Effect 2, where Mordin will sing a song called like "I'm a Modern Scientist Solarian" or something like that. I can't remember exactly. You'll have to look it up. Okay. It's incredibly charming. You'll love him after hearing that.
Oh, there we go. I retract all of it. Well, then let's move along. Let's jump into Mass Effect 3. What did you think of Mass Effect 3? Tell me about your time with it, and then let's discuss a little bit that ending. We don't need to give anything like too massive away, but as the trilogy came to a conclusion, what did you think? And also, did you play much of the multiplayer mode in Mass Effect 3?
Oh yeah. God, Mass Effect 3. Everyone who's a Mass Effect fan has an opinion about Mass Effect 3, let me tell you. But from my experience, I thought it was actually the best Mass Effect game until the last 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. Where you can definitely tell like it was like a Halo 2 situation where they just had to wrap the game up and just ship it. Mm-hmm. Because like the way the game ended, it was just like it ultimate, like they also advertise the game as saying like every decision you made will play a factor into the ending of the game. But really the end of the game just kind of being like, do you want it to be red, blue, or green? Kind of thing. And and with the whole Star Child thing was just kind of weird. You can't tell if it was like all in Shepard's head or if it was like an actual thing or like a manifestation. I don't know. It was really vague. I mean, which kind of led to the really cool like indoctrination theory about Mass Effect 3.
That's what I was just typing because I remembered watching an Angry Joe show about it, and I thought the indoctrination theory was freaking cool, and I thought it was a nice twist. But then didn't they come out and they said no, that's not what it was? But I think one of the writers says he likes that theory.
Yeah, I think for the longest time they were being real coy with it. They just wanted the fans to kind of come up with their own interpretation of the ending and stuff like that, which I appreciate. It's like kind of the same thing like when I said like the band Tool. They used to never put the lyrics in their CDs whenever you'd buy them because they wanted you to have however you felt about their lyrics and songs is what is the song supposed to be about kind of thing.
Yep.
And basically spelling everything out like that kind of ruins a little bit of the mystery and like your own personal experience of it. But I think, eventually they did come out with saying that like, nah, indoctrination shit theory is a bunch of rubbish, but it still makes a lot of sense though. I think it's just like, it was partially like a coping mechanism for all Mass Effect fans after 3.
100%.
Like how could this happen?
Well, I think something funny, when I finished Mass Effect 2, it wraps up so fast. Even though all of my crew survived, the ending cinematics and everything is literally like, okay, wrap it up. Let's get everybody out of the theater. Let's go. Come on, out of here. Restart the game. You want a new playthrough. So it was funny going through it again and thinking, well, that was an amazing game, but it sure felt like the last little bit of cinematics definitely got cut due to crunch or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I feel exactly what you're saying with Mass Effect 3. I played it through once. I didn't really resonate with it. I must have rushed through the game and then put it away. And then my last year of college, I had a really tiny apartment I was renting, and the TV was on top of a dresser in like the room that had the bed in it. And so I could lay in bed and watch the TV. But I mean, the whole apartment was that one tiny room. And I remember that was like the game I went through at night, a replay of Mass Effect 3. I appreciated it a lot more on a second playthrough. I wasn't as concerned about the ending, like you just mentioned. It was a little disappointing to see most of those choices add up to only a couple of pathways, and all the pathways are kind of the same. They're none of them are all that gratifying or satisfying, and it felt very much like a let's spin the top moment from Inception, but handled so clumsily, if that's a way to say it. So it didn't take away the joy. But anyway, what were you going to say? Sorry.
How did you choose your first ending of Mass Effect 3?
Oh, gosh. See, I don't remember. I'm going to have, it's been long enough that I've forgotten. And going into a new Mass Effect 3 playthrough, it's going to be a refresher. So how about you?
My first time, I think I've only played the game through once, actually.
Okay.
But the time I did Green, which was like a simulation.
Okay.
Basically,
yeah.
The Star Child kind of convinced me that is a cycle that's been repeating for however long, and so the only way to end it is by everyone being the same. And I was like, okay, sounds good to me. But it's kind of like, again, like you kind of said, like it was kind of really wrapped up at the end, because like you just kind of take a lot of what the Star Child said at his word. If it was an ultimate indoctrination theory, and then ultimately it was the Reapers trying to get what they wanted, you kind of be like, okay, little Star Child, I'll believe that you say that this has been a theory. That's a cycle that's been repeating for millennia. So you didn't really see it or felt that. You're just kind of told that. And you had to make like the most ultimate decision based off of what just being told.
Okay, now I'm remembering these decisions. It's like synthesize and destroy. There's like one other one. Okay, yeah. I'm intentionally going to stay vague on it until I get to that point, because a Mass Effect 3 playthrough is definitely happening this next year. But the multiplayer I never really touched. I had a coworker who was obsessed with it, and still to this day says it is was one of the most incredible gaming things he had ever experienced. So please tell me what I was missing out on. It was like a horde PvE defense mode, right?
Correct. And it was amazing.
Is it still playable?
It's still playable. You can still find lobbies, I think, because you only need 3 other players, if I remember correctly. I think it was 4 people or maybe 3 people on a squad that would join in.
Yes.
And this is back when the EA forced multiplayer on everything back in the day.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're still kind of doing it now, but before it was very obvious, like adding multiplayer. And when people first heard those multiplayer in Mass Effect, everyone just kind of rolled their eyes like, oh my God, this is, EA doing EA things. This is going to be a tacked on BS mode that no one's going to like. And it actually was really fun. It has a really good gameplay depth to it. You get to play with some really unique characters as well. And you get to just play against all the enemies in kind of repeatable arenas the maps were pretty fun as well. Oh my God, it was a hidden gem, the multiplayer of Mass Effect 3. It's actually, I played it a ton. It was great. You get to be like a Vanguard Krogan, so you're just this big chunky dude, just swooping around the map and stuff. You get to play some really unique combinations of races and characters and classes. That was just it was awesome.
See, that is where Mass Effect 3 super shines. They tuned the gameplay to sort of its perfect spot. I feel like they had mastered just about everything. And then to just add in that additional value, I just looked it up. My replay was on the Legendary Edition. They did not include the multiplayer on the Legendary Edition. Apparently, you can still play it on the 2012 version. I don't know what that population is like, but what a missed opportunity.
I'm wondering, though, if it didn't get added in, maybe because it's just so much extra work to do a multiplayer thing with that, or maybe it's because it did have loot boxes. That's this is when loot boxes first started coming
side
around.
Of it. You're right. Okay.
Yeah. And so you had to basically grind out credits that you would spend to unlock loot boxes. And that's kind of how your unlock system was. So the unlocks in Mass Effect 3 were pretty bad. It was all randomized about how much credits you would earn per match, and then spend that to get a loot box to then get hopefully a good unlock, like a gold version of something like that. So that's one thing I didn't really like about the multiplayer, and it kind of deterred me from really grinding it out. But the gameplay was just so much fun. But maybe it has
Yeah.
something to do with that, especially with like a new game having loot boxes, and there, there's legislation behind that now and stuff with the international market for Mass Effect. That I can imagine just going like, you know what, it's more of a headache than it's worth, because people will probably just jump in and play it for like a month and then just kind of leave it behind.
I'm just wondering though, with the success of Helldivers 2, which you introduced me to this year, we played a bunch of it. It was so much fun, and this ties into both Mass Effect and Halo. I cannot believe either property does not have a super sweet PvE mode that's just out there right now. I feel like Halo is so perfect for a wave-based defense firefight standalone that just gets updates, has its own studio working on it. That makes so much sense to me. And it's same thing. Mass Effect doesn't necessarily have to wait, 10, 11 years for every huge swing at the new entry in the franchise. I think that universe could still see some experimentation within, like a PvE mode these days. It just feels like Helldivers nailed it so well. There's demand for those kind of co-op experiences, right?
Yeah, and really, actually, it's kind of very similar with Helldivers and how Mass Effect 3's multiplayer plays out. Like, obviously, they're much smaller arenas and like this big open spaces, but like, it's similar kind of vibe where like you have these big like boss characters you have to fight, little ads that are just easy to kill, and everything in between. Each faction had their own types of damage you would take, or different types of weapons you would utilize, or different types of tactics. Like the Reapers, or the Reapers, and then there was like various other. I can't remember. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But there was like 3 main factions you had to fight against, and then they eventually added in a 4th one, which combined everything all together as well on that one. But oh god, yeah, the multiplayer was a freaking gem, man. It's a shame they did bring it back for Andromeda, but it was Andromeda, so it just didn't really hit the same.
Why don't we go there? Because I have only played the first 30 minutes of Andromeda. I tried it on Game Pass a few years ago, and I kind of fell off. Did you play it? Did you beat it? What was your experience like?
I tried my best to play through it, but I just couldn't really find myself to get the motivation to continue playing the game. I think there was some elements of the gameplay of Andromeda that they tried to simplify a lot to just make it more streamlined, so you're not like constantly pausing the game to figure out what abilities you want to use and then play again. Because I think, if I remember correctly, unless I just was dumb enough and couldn't figure out the option how to do this in the settings or whatever, but a big thing for me was strategizing your abilities along with your squad mates' abilities to optimize efficiency on the battlefield,
Yeah.
Even though that would require you to press like left bumper to, pause the game for a second to then be able to figure out what you want to do. But it was ultimately beneficial because you get to control how the gameplay felt. Where in Andromeda, they left that all to the AI to figure that stuff out. So it was all up to you just to do your own abilities, to then, kill however you want. And they let the AI do the rest of like your squad. So they would just use their own abilities. They would shoot wherever they wanted and stuff like that. I think you can direct them around a little bit, but that was just like a really big letdown for me, because I would specifically choose squad mates in Mass Effect 1 through 3 because they complemented my abilities. So then I would be able to, if I was like a biotic character, I would bring someone who was a little more tech efficient against like the Geth or something like that, or bring someone else who would be, more efficient in some other kind of ability, so I can be able to kind of cover all my bases and then be able to use those abilities with those 2 squad mates however I would like. And he couldn't really do that with Andromeda, which really was a big detriment to me when it came to the experience of playing the game. And I think also just like the characters that he came across, like for the first, I think I got about 10, 15 hours into Mass Effect Andromeda, and I just didn't really find anything that was too exciting. And I felt like a lot of the story beats were kind of rehashing when it came to like, the Prometheans and stuff like that, kind of being like whatever the new race was in Andromeda, but it was basically like the Prometheans again kind of thing.
Is it set in a post-Shepard timeline?
Yes, it's I can't remember how many years, like 400 years after the events of Mass Effect 3, if I remember correctly. Okay. It could be wrong exactly, but it's like a few hundred years afterwards, yeah.
Perfect. So let's turn our eyes then to the future. What do we know about Mass Effect 4? How long has it been in development so far? I mean, it's been at least a couple of years at this point since we've heard word of it. Are you optimistic? And what do you think it could bring to the table.
I mean, all we really know is that it's happening.
Yeah. Yes.
This many years after the initial reveal, which was I think 2020 was when it was revealed that they were working on a new Mass Effect game.
Yeah.
And even then, it was that trailer they showed was more just like a recruitment tool to get developers in, so they didn't have to like be in secrecy of developing Mass Effect 4.
That was 2020. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Was that a Game Awards announcement? I feel like it was a December thing.
It could have been, or maybe it might have been like an N7 day thing. Because on November 7th, again, they always celebrate Mass Effect. It could have been that. Either, yeah, and at the end of the year kind of thing. I mean, we did see Liara in the trailer as well. We saw, actually, it looks like maybe like Ryder from Mass Effect Andromeda, and also some of the traditional characters like Krogans. We saw like a Geth was referenced in one of the images as well. So it seems like they're maybe like really trying to go back to basics maybe a little bit when it comes to Mass Effect, but also maybe try to mix everything all together at once, so like everything you did in Andromeda still actually happens like in the universe kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's tough to get really excited just because of how BioWare has been really since Mass Effect 3. It's been, I wouldn't even say hit or miss. It's been kind of meh and miss, really. Like with Andromeda, it was a meh game. And then you had Anthem, which was definitely a miss. Even though I remember you said that you actually liked the gameplay of it. I thought it was pretty fun. But
yeah, did you play much Anthem?
I didn't really play. I don't think I really played enough to really give a true opinion on it. I think I just kind of played it. And I was like, this game looks good. And these 3 classes are fun. But they didn't really have anything that really like made me go like, I have to play Anthem, you know.
There was no meat. There was nothing to it. The gameplay itself and the movement tech was a ton of fun. Like flying around really did feel like an Iron Man game. But yeah, it just stinks that you took such a talented narrative studio and you're like, live service. It's got to be. We got to do live service. There's no way around it. And here we are, 2024. That cycle is just continuing, where if it doesn't succeed immediately, it's gone. The studio's gone. And I still feel like not all the publishers have learned live service is not the way to go for all of your titles.
Right. I mean, they tried to do that with Dragon Age. Remember, it was Dreadwolf. And I think if I remember correctly, it was supposed to be like a live service multiplayer kind of game, if I remember correctly. And then somewhere in development, about, I think a year or two, I think it was a year before the game finally came out here, that they switched to it being like a standard RPG type of experience and called it Dragon Age the Veilguard. And from what I've heard, like I haven't had a chance to really play it, but from all accounts I've heard that it actually is like a decent game. It maybe not hold up to the standards of like Dragon Age Origins or the predecessors in the franchise, but from what I've heard, that like it's a good game, just not a great game. And we always associate BioWare with Dragon Age and Mass Effect and also Knights of the Old Republic of these like masterpieces in RPG that we just kind of hope to get to that standard. And I don't think Veilguard really came up with that, especially I've heard some of the dialogue in that game is pretty cringe. So there's a little bit of that, but from all accounts I've heard it's a decent game. So it's like a meh as a hit, I guess you would call it. So it kind of gives me a little bit of hope about that, but like the entire team that made that original trilogy for Mass Effect are no longer with BioWare. They've gone off and done their own things, or just you know, there's no longer with the studio. So
different places in the industry now.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know it'd be tough to really capture that same kind of feeling and tone as Mass Effect, because you basically would have to be, I would think, like a hard reboot in some kind of way to try to get people excited about Mass Effect 4, because it's been so long since the last one that it really you could just do any kind of starting point and it would work. So there's a lot of open-endedness to what they could do with Mass Effect 4, but I'm not just like blindly excited about it.
Yep. I feel similarly. I think the last 5 years and the last 2 in particular have taught me, go in with an open mind, try things before you give your feedback, but also a healthy level of caution is appropriate. So I'm trying not to get my expectations too high. The pressures of how games are built now, where it has to be so massive and studios spend over half a decade working on something, that's tricky, and that's a risk. I do miss the times where we were getting these kind of experiences every 3 or 4 years. Not a fan of crunch. That's awful, but I don't know what to expect. So I'm just going to keep an open mind and hope it's going to be fantastic. I think from the show perspective, like the fact that they're making a narrative show sounds incredible. If you get the right people involved who care deeply about the fans, the source material, who are just absolutely enthralled with that universe, you could do something incredible. I really think that it's so primed for, no pun intended, like just incredible just opportunities. So I do want to ask you, we're shifting to Halo here. When do you think we're going to see or hear something new for Halo? So many rumors about the CE thing. I haven't even gotten to ask you what you think of all of it. Do you see something happening at the Summer Game Fest thing, and what is that, 6 months from now?
I think we'll see something because they've already revealed a part of it. So we already know it's out there. So people are going to be looking forward to like, hey, it's Xbox. When's the next Halo thing happening? Which my guess would be 2026 would be as far as we see the next game come out. Of course, when it came to all like the CE rumors and stuff, like CE remake rumors, I think it could be something where I'm not fully sold on if that's actually happening. Really, just because of what was revealed, because all the leaks and rumors that we were hearing about were referring to what we saw back in October for the HCS reveal about talking about switching to Unreal and stuff like that. Like you saw a classic Armor Master Chief with an M6D playing against elites. People not knowing that they're just showcasing in the engine could think, oh my God, Combat Evolved remakes happening. So I think it's where those rumors came from that. So I don't know, I feel like they're still going to try to push a new direction with Halo and make a new game. But I mean, a CE remake would be kind of cool, but I feel like it would be redundant as well. But honestly, try to do it in a different way, like kind of like say like how Modern Warfare 2019, kind of basically remastered or rebooted the Modern Warfare series, or if they want to just do like what like Unreal or like kind of like how Resident Evil 4 kind of just brought like a classic game up to the modern standards and then some. Yeah, there's different ways you can do about it. But yeah, I think 2026 will get the actual game, and I think 2025 will actually see like what the game's actually going to be.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited. I'm pretty impatient. I want whatever is new to be shown. Like whatever they're doing, I'm super ready. I had a good fill with Infinite, but now what's next? So anyway, thanks very much.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on that. I really, getting a chance to talk about some Mass Effect. It's like finally get to talk shop with somebody, that you don't really get a chance to talk about, Mass Effect with many people. So I'm like, yes.
Let's do another after I finish Mass Effect 3 and I can complain about what color I picked, okay?
Sounds perfect. I'd love to do that.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll talk to everybody again really soon.
Like and subscribe.